So I just want to welcome you to Bend Film Festival, and we're really excited to have you for a Q&A after your film. This is the director, Brad Bischoff, and we're just going to have a nice casual conversation about the film and hopefully get some additional insight into the project. So I would like to just kind of start off with a general comment about the film, and then we can dive into some questions. So to me, your film definitely had a very rare interpersonal quality to it, which I really loved. The idea of conversational film is not a new idea, but the way you did it felt very raw and very unprocessed in terms of a dramatic take on a relationship. And dreams. So I'm wondering if any of that, what I just said, was part of your intent for the theme of the film, and what other intents you had for making this particular film.
Yeah, thank you for that insight too. To me, it's a very emotional piece. I've always loved films like Before Sunrise with Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise, and conversation-driven films where you're not sure where it's going to go, but it starts and is led by the conversation, and that's going to sort of take you through this piece. And with this couple, I really wanted to, a lot of my films end up reflecting where I am at any given moment in my life, and my films are very personal, and this film was no different. I wanted it to be a film about a couple chasing this great American dream, and as it starts, it seems like a very romantic morning, but as the day goes on, through the conversations and the places they go, you start to see that this picture perfect suburban life, maybe there's a lot more turmoil beneath the surface. And I wanted it to be to go into some raw and real places with their desire to start a family, but that it just doesn't seem to be working for them. I find it very metaphorical too. Like, I wanted the whole thing to take place in one long day into night, sunrise into a dark sunset and into the night, because to me it was all like, yes, it takes place on this narrative 24-hour timeline, but to me each scene and each moment there's a lot more beneath the surface if you look at it on a symbolic level. And that's, as soon as they abandon the structure of work in the morning, that was the very first moment that seems the most romantic, with the first toast, like with good intentions. Because when we have a first drink, we give a toast and there's a good intention to it. But then after that, once a couple hours go by and we're on to the third or fourth drink, we realize now we haven't been working in a while and we're still drinking, and it's not quite as romantic. And now all of a sudden it might not seem like we have as much money as we had. And then, so each scene, there's a little bit more to the actual conversation. It's very metaphorical to me. What happens when you get rid of structure and you're just spontaneous? You might have a very difficult time achieving the goals that you set out for yourself. And so, with where I was going on in my life, that's where this story came from. I wrote the script when my partner was pregnant with our first child. So that was I wrote it during those 9 months. That was sort of the inception of the whole thing.
Wow, that is really interesting and brilliant. Thank you for sharing that with us. You brought up the drink, which was going to be one of my questions. So you've sort of answered this somewhat already, but to me, the drink became a clear source of symbolism, in my opinion, watching it. Is there anything else about the drink that you want to say? I mean, obviously it can also just be a simplistic element that is the tie that binds from scene to scene, but it definitely felt like a lot more than that. So
absolutely. I think for me, a lot of my work, alcoholism tends to be involved in in some of my short film work, and this being my first feature, I wanted it to be in the film, but I didn't want it to be an overt, like, these people are alcoholics. Like, I wanted it to just be in every scene, and in every scene it's a different drink, you know, and it's a different type of drink. And to me, that was a metaphor where, you know, they say, don't mix your spirits, don't mix beer with liquor, with wine. And in this, they just, in the morning, it's coffee and whiskey. You know, after that, it's a mimosa. After that, it's beer. And it's just always different because I wanted it to be chaotic. And by having a steady camera, there's almost this voyeuristic quality where you're kind of from afar, just watching it happen. And it's not until you sort of get to the end of the second act where all of a sudden now the camera language is putting you in the driver's seat with them, because that's how some of those nights are, where all of a sudden you find yourself at a clubhouse bar and you're just completely in your own world. Everything else, it just falls out of focus. And you're just in this, all of a sudden you're in this intense conversation for 10 minutes. It's just a 10-minute hyper-focused scene. And the strong sound design of everything around you, but you don't see it. It's just you, it's very isolated. And then all of a sudden it cuts wide. You know, so I wanted the camera language to speak to an alcohol-fueled night as well. But getting back to the symbolism of it, I think it goes back to that idea of when you first take a drink and you give a toast, it's romantic. And the whole thing of a toast is that it's said with great intention. But the problem then becomes, if you don't then put the drink down and live to the toast that you gave, the toast means nothing. And now you're just drinking. And to me, that was kind of the point. They just keep drinking. And so everything they desire isn't necessarily going to come true. And the toast becomes sort of just another number on a cocktail napkin. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. And well thought out and portrayed in the film. And you started to talk a little bit about the film making itself, the framing, the way you shot it a little bit. So can we talk a little bit, the cinematography to me was appropriately invasive. You know, it was very moved with the characters, stayed right in their bubble a lot of the time. You know, there were times where you pulled out just to air out environments as they moved from place to place. But can you talk a little bit about how you and Daphne worked together to shoot it and, you know, to create the final feel of the film?
Yeah, absolutely. And Daphne was such an integral piece to this film and making it as pristine as it looks. I mean, she was an absolute genius behind the camera. And we met via Zoom and phone calls for about a week prior. And I actually, there's a deeper story to that, but she came on late in the process. Like, we were already on location and I had been planning this shoot for years. And so there's kind of this whole, to throw out a sports metaphor, there's like this whole playbook, you know, like locations I had been planning for months. And the original DP that I had didn't end up shooting the film. And so a week before, we're on this mad scramble to find somebody. And Daphne and I connected immediately. When I saw her work, we had 2 phone calls, and she flew out immediately from LA to Chicago, which is where we shot. And we sat and had some really great meetings looking at this overall structure and theme of what we wanted to do with the camera. And the whole thing was, from the beginning, we want to start with these big wides and voyeuristic long lens shots, reminiscent of like Marcy May Marlene, and some of those borderline films that I'm such a huge fan of. Antonio Campos and Sean Durkin was inspired by those. And then we wanted to sort of find a language that would help us feel the drink, as you said. once the film goes on. And so there's this arc. The whole time we had this arc in mind, so that by the end, it sort of feels like we were there. It sort of feels like I wanted you to feel like an objective viewer at the beginning, and you're just watching romance, you're watching love, but with each location and each drink, we're getting a little bit closer until eventually we're just in close-ups. And there's some stuff that didn't quite make the film, but some of my favorite stuff actually is on after they leave the clubhouse and it's on that dark road and they're just trying to get back home. And it's really loose and really free. And we wanted to create an environment that was free to the actors. And we would just find a way to adapt our light and shoot them in a way that thematically worked. But she did a great job at helping it feel always intentional, like we're not just getting stuff. This is very thought out cinematography.
Definitely. Very, very cool. In terms of your leads, they were pretty magical on screen. I mean, they had a very symbiotic, synergistic feel about them, almost as if they actually know each other in real life or have for a long time. I mean, that's the way it came across to me and the way they played off of each other. Can you talk a little bit about them and perhaps any processes or methods that they worked through to kind of build this comfortability level and the way they were able to just naturally come off to each other on screen?
Yeah, and thank you. That means a lot. The chemistry, I feel like to do a movie like this that is so relationship based and conversation based, you have to really like the actors and they have to have that chemistry. And so, I mean, I did a lot of test shoots for a couple of years there, and Eva was recommended to me by my friend Frank Mosley, and she's in New York, and so we're in Chicago, and I did a Zoom call with her, and I watched her work, and immediately I just was, drawn to her as a person, which is kind of the first thing I look for is if, how does this person make me feel? Do we want to work together? Is this natural? Is this going to feel good? And we connected immediately. And she flew out and we did a test scene with another actor that I had been considering at the time for ultimately Saleh's role. And the chemistry just wasn't there with the test shoot. And so that was a really, it's one of those moments where you're kind of like, as bad as I want to shoot this and we have things lined up, we have to pause everything. Because for us and for me, the acting's not working. They know it, I know it. So we have to kind of pause this and kind of go back on our search. And so the two producers on the film, Lisa Rudin and Justin Nijam, I had talked to Justin because I remembered there was this actor who I had always wanted to work with. I don't even know why. I saw The Band's Visit in 2007, and it was the first time I was away from home. I was a little bit sheltered, and I had gone to my first film festival at Telluride, 2007. And so I'm having this like cathartic experience, and I'm like living and going to, bars and watching movies, and it's just such an amazing environment. And The Band's Visit was the first film I saw in that environment. And so for me, it was just this just an incredible film, and Saleh just stayed with me. I don't know why. He just did very striking personality on screen. And I looked him up, and I also liked that, he had never done a US movie. And so I was kind of like, oh, maybe there's an interesting collaboration here. And I brought that idea up to Justin, who has family in Palestine. And so he reached out, and it turns out his cousin knows Saleh, and he's always wanted to do a US movie. And so they put us in touch, and we just started emailing each other. And no joke, for 2 years, we were talking. As soon as he read the script, he wanted to do it. And then it just became a logistical thing of, okay, how, when, and over those years, we would have phone calls and just talk about this character, talk about mannerisms and, references and just fun stuff like that. And then came the time where it was like, okay, now I have to introduce you to Eva. You know what I mean? Because I really like you and I really like Eva. So let's see. And we did a call together, and then there just became that moment of just trust, of taking a risk. And we just booked both their plane tickets and said, look, we're shooting in a month, and it's going to be, 2 months in this area, and let's make it happen. And you guys should get in 2 weeks early so that we can go create some memories together. And that's how I like to work as a director. Is it's not so much rehearsing the text, but we'll go out. And I took them both to a ring shop in this local suburb, and I just wanted them to go ring shopping as if they're about to get engaged, but to have a drink before they go in, so they're a little toasty. And we would just go around and just kind of having, creating these sort of memories together for a couple weeks. And through that experience, we ended up having a lot of very greatly intimate conversations about our own lives, our personal love lives. And I think that helped us three really trust each other, so that by the time we get on set, they know the text. They had memorized the text. Honestly, that they did on their own. And whenever we worked, it was we're just talking, so then we got on set, and I was just very happy to see that there was I felt like a natural attraction, a natural chemistry, which makes the arc of the whole story work for me.
What a great backstory. And, I love that sort of takes the mystery out of how people come together on a set, because sometimes people just can't understand. And really it's like any other relationship in life. You just have to spend time together and bond. And so that's great to hear. In terms of the locations,
Yeah.
I'm really interested to hear about that, because obviously, was this an entire neighborhood you took over? Were these different buildings all over the God's green earth that you brought together around this mound of grass? So tell me about the locations.
I wrote it all for this town that I was born in Barrington, Illinois, which is just 40 minutes north of Chicago about.
Very close to Milwaukee, where I am.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I was born there, but I never really, and then I grew up in Buffalo Grove. So I was never that familiar with Barrington. But when it came time to write this, I started looking at, first I started in like the John Hughes locations of Glencoe, because I thought that would be kind of cool to sort of like re-envision, those same streets. But then I was introduced by a woman, Christina Hatherley, that I know. She introduced me to Lori Rowe, who's a realtor. And I took a phone call with Lori, and she said, I know the perfect spot. It's in Windstone. It's a gated community around a golf course. And, I know 8 houses that might be interested. And so we went, I looked at the whole space, and as soon as I drove in, it just felt like a movie town. I was just like, if we can somehow get everybody on board here, we could shoot the whole thing here. And so slowly but surely, each homeowner, one by one, they were interested in it. They wanted to do it. The golf course said yes. The clubhouse said yes. It was just like everybody came together and really banded, to help make this thing. I said a joke once where I was like, it takes a village to raise a baby, but it really took Barrington to make a movie. Like they did it. Like we did it because they allowed us to do it. It was just pure magic. And when I went back there, there's one funny story, kind of funny, I guess. I walked into a house. I didn't know any of these people, and they let us live in their homes too. And, fed us and took care of us and just really felt like family. And I walked into this house and I saw a big picture above their dining room table. And it was of a small island. And I knew exactly where it was in upstate New York on a very small lake that is in my family's name. It's like Bischoff Cove. It's on Windover Lake. And, you know, it's surrounded by like my family members, and I'm a random house. And so I'm like, you know, where was this photo taken? And the mother goes, oh, our daughter was on a road trip and ended up in this small town, and just, you know, there was this lake, and I don't know, but it was in upstate New York, somewhere in Windover, I think it was. And I just, you know, I actually just kind of broke down, because you know, was going through a very personal, this whole experience of making this movie and going back to my birthplace, and my whole life was kind of in turmoil a little bit. My partner and I were splitting, and then coming back together, you know, and then this movie's kind of about that. And then I'm in this stranger's home, and there's like a picture of, you know, it just felt like I was surrounded by angels. And when your life is sort of becoming uprooted and you find yourself back at your birthplace, you know, of which I had never really been before, it felt like a rebirth. It was a very cathartic experience.
That's incredible. I would not have known. I mean, thank you for sharing that as well. I mean, that's some hot, heavy synergy going on there.
Yeah,
well, that's pretty cool.
It was magic. It was magic.
Yeah. Okay, so I can't believe it, but we're close to the last few minutes.
Yes.
So of course, I would love to hear where you are these days, what's next on the horizon for you, or anything you want to share. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're very excited to get this film out there. So we're finishing up a festival run, and you know, hoping the goal for this is to find distribution and get it out there on the platforms. And then after this, I have a couple other scripts that are in development, and I'm looking for those to be my next project, my next feature. One of them's a feature, one of them's a mini series. And I just wrote a children's book called Mom and Dad Live in Different Houses that I'm very excited about too. So, and then for work, I'm a commercial director, and make a living, you know, directing and editing commercials out here in LA.
Excellent. Well, you've got plenty to keep you busy, and I'm really excited to see, you know, what comes next for you in the film world as well. So good luck with whichever script makes it out of the gate for you. And please, I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival and get some time to watch some of the other films, and just overall enjoy it. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, Marissa, thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that concludes our wonderful Q&A. So thank you.
That was so fun.